Where are you at, Joe?
I am in West London, sunny West London.
Sunny West. That's a rarity
Okay,
in itself. There.
there's not a lot of clouds in the sky, but it's going to be dark in about half an hour.
Well,
So
enjoy the 30 minutes. I won't keep you
yeah.
up too long. Wow, got to dive into the movie. I can't believe this is your first feature. I mean, this is you've been doing films for a while, and finally you got to do this movie. What was it about this film? Obviously, you co-wrote it also, and also, what's the inspiration? Because there's always a story about what kind of sparks your mind about a movie like this, and this movie is very gripping in so many ways. What were you thinking initially to lead you to this script?
So I think I first came up with the idea, like I've been jobbing as a kind of commercials and corporate kind of director and trying to get into features for my whole life, for my whole career is about 20 years or so ish, something like that, 18 years. And I've always been writing in that time. I've written a dozen scripts probably, and the first 8 were awful and I'd never show anyone. But then the last couple, I think, someone said to me once, you've got something like 8, I think they said 6 scripts in you that are awful, and you basically got to get through those before you get to the good stuff underneath, So I've got all that out of my system. And then I came up with this idea, I think it might have been when the kind of, I don't know if you got the case in the States, the Joseph Fritzl case. It was kind of that kind of era, which is that guy who basically locked a woman up in his basement for 20 years and then she got out, And it wasn't that
heard
story.
Of that. Yes.
Yeah, it wasn't that story I was trying to tell, but there was something in that probably got my mind thinking. And I thought, well, what if he was, she was having a baby, and it kind of came up with this concept and then couldn't find a way to do it that wasn't kind of torture-y. You know what I mean? It wasn't like kind of like overly grim. So I put it on the back burner and then did many other things for 10 years or so. And then I met a producer, a film producer, and then we did a short film together that went quite well. And we wanted to do a feature. And the films that I'd written, I had I think 2 good ones at that point, but they were both quite big in scale. And one was about this kind of murderous rampage thing. And then this other thing was like a kind of a robbery, had loads of kind of set piece action bits in it. And neither of them were good for a first time. We knew we needed like a limited amount of cast, limited amount of locations. So I went through my ideas list and this popped out at me. I hadn't read it for years. And I was like, oh no, wait. And I think the fact that I'd had a kid, I'd had another one on the way, I saw a different way into it that I hadn't seen before. I saw a different perspective on the idea. And that happens to me quite a lot with my ideas. I'll write them down and it's not that it's a bad idea. It's just that it's not the right time for that idea, and the way I look at that idea and what I bring to it changes as time goes on,
Interesting. The thing I always think about like horror movies and stuff, the scariest stuff is when you're not supposed to be scared of these people, and the Fiona and Jack's characters technically aren't scary or intimidating. They have their blow-ups and kind of outbursts, but they're very calm, cool, and collected a lot of the time, especially Jack's character. And that's what makes it terrifying in so many ways. How did you approach their characters? Because it's obviously, this movie is a ride where you're going like, well, maybe they're not crazy. Well, maybe they're not too bad, but maybe they're just very caring, overly like kind of caring. Like sometimes, certain grandparents are very nurturing of a new baby in a family. Tell me how you approach their characters in a sense, because what makes them creepy and scary is how, in a sense, the line of normalcy that they constantly are on.
So, yeah, I mean, there's a couple of answers to this. The really kind of like, I'm quite a logical thinking dude. So what I ended up doing actually was I made a spreadsheet with every scene in the film and actually worked out of 10 kind of like how manipulative they are, how paranoid they're feeling, and kind of trying to map out how they're feeling using that. And it was something that I ended up using in rehearsals a bit because we were able to discuss where they're supposed to be emotionally in those scenes, and we worked quite hard on mapping out how paranoid or not, as the case may be, Charlotte is in each particular scene, how she should be feeling, whether she's feeling rebellious or exhausted or, whether she's just grieving, So yeah, a big part of it is just the cast as well. You know, Jack is, you know, one of the kind of the biggest up and coming young actors in the UK for a reason. You know, he's
No question.
incredibly talented. He's disturbingly good looking, and just a nice guy. You know, he's very good. And Fiona is about as good as it gets. You know, she's a real force, and she's really a giving and kind and friendly and collaborative person to work with. You know, she's super cool. And when you're collaborating with people like that, they become so invested in the characters that they help. You know, they don't hinder. They don't spend the whole time asking questions and causing trouble.
Exactly.
They're bringing things to the table that make it a better film. You know.
You know, there's so much psychology in this movie, in a sense where sometimes you think Tamara's character, Charlotte, is kind of nuts and crazy in itself. Is she maybe like the one that's kind of, you know, you kind of go into her head as you're watching the movie, like maybe she's just like tormented or tortured by having this baby. And the whole question of you know, even bringing a child to this life that, you know, she might not want to have in so many ways too. I'm very curious about the psychology aspect of this movie, because you have a lot of moving parts. You have grief of the, you know, the fiance, the boyfriend that's randomly dies, you know, out of nowhere. You have the baby on the way. Tell me kind of where you were going with a lot of this, because I went through this movie thinking like, why does the family, do they want to trap her? Do they want the child? Like, what is their motive eventually? And it's kind of you figure out as you go. What was your kind of intention with the motives of the family, really, that what they wanted from Charlotte?
So I think there's a couple of things here.
Mm-hmm.
One is that there's a lot emotionally going on in the film that Jason, my co-writer, and I were personally going through. You know, Jason, when we were writing, had his twins were born premature. So they were like in an incubator in hospital for almost 2 months, for like a long time. So he was going through quite a lot with those. And then I had a daughter who's making noise downstairs, who I delivered myself on our bedroom floor because she came slightly faster than expected.
Oh my goodness.
Stuff. And then there's that side of it. And then also, you know, so we were dealing with kind of the stress and the trauma and the kind of the panic and the kind of the worry that you get being a new parent. And then on top of that, the grief. You know, I've suffered loss in my family, and it's a way of me kind of processing that. My wife's a therapist, which probably helps. You know, we talk about feelings quite a lot in the house. I've been through therapy before. And I think going through that process helps you to, makes you more eloquent when it comes to discussing emotions and thinking about the way you're feeling. And I think it's made my writing better over the years because I'm able to put a real spin on things.
Mm-hmm.
And there's another part to your question. I was going to say about the class system. The other thing about families in the UK, we've got this kind of institutionalized class system. You know, the kind of upper class, middle class, lower class, working class, basically.
Right.
That isn't the same in the States, really. You know, in America, people celebrate aspiration, whereas in the UK, there's a kind of big antipathy towards it in a lot of ways. You know, if you see a guy driving a Rolls Royce in America, the cliche is someone would say like, "Oh, great, I want to get a Rolls Royce one day." Whereas in the UK, someone drives a Rolls Royce and you think, "Flash prick," you know.
Yeah,
that's kind of like
show off, you know, that sort of.
Yeah. It's like it's the different. I think we've got a different psyche over here, and part of that is this kind of like this upper class kind of world that people won't let go of, you know, and that they are so desperate to hang on to it that even though due to death duty and taxes and all the things the family have been through, they should really just sell the place, get a normal terrace house in a street somewhere and just let it go.
Right.
They're not willing to do it. They're not willing to subject their once great family to kind of being among the normals, you know.
Mm-hmm. You know, for me, I'm not. I mean, I'll put the spoiler thing on the thing so people don't have it ruined. But the ending is fascinating to me because it's so open-ended. Usually, there's some sort of comfortable conclusion in a lot of films like that. But the ending is the most unresting part in the whole movie, probably, because you totally, there's so many webs of where this could go. Where do you kind of envision the story in your mind going after what we see kind of fade to black moment? Did you envision the story going on further, or sort of what you wanted or envisioned yourself as as someone that would watch the movie?
I think there's something about the way that the sound fades down on Tamara at the end that they're never going to hear from her again. She's gone into the system, and I know that we have a very different healthcare system in this country than you do in the States, but it's equally open to manipulation if you know the right kind of people.
Yeah.
So I think that, and I think that that kid is Ben part 2. It's just the same thing's going to happen again. Basically, it's like the snake will continue to eat its own tail, as it were.
Right, because the kid now doesn't have a mother, and same thing. Does it feel abandoned when it's growing up? There's all these questions where the thing doesn't stop, like you said. It doesn't. There's no stopping point of change in kind of the history keeps on repeating itself. That's a very interesting aspect to it.
Hopefully it's not going to horrify people too much, but maybe it's a good thing if it does.
I mean,
my parents haven't seen it yet, so hopefully they won't disown me when they see the movie.
Well, your kids are good, so there's no worry about that at this point. Wanted to kind of finish off by asking, I love just finding out when I'm talking to filmmakers and actors, personal hobbies and interests, because I always feel like the real life sparks, and in your case, so many ways, this movie sparks what you come up with creatively. What sort of things you enjoy in everyday life that, when you're away now from scripts and not thinking about writing one, what do you enjoy to just kind of get away?
Well, I think my wife would love this question because she complains about it all the time. But the reality is, I still have a quote unquote day job, like I am a kind of jobbing director, editor, cameraman kind of dude. I feel at the moment I'm doing some editing for a photographer, and I'm kind of making ends meet doing kind of normal kind of filmmaking stuff. Mm-hmm. So this features is kind of my hobby in a funny kind of way. You can see that's a script I'm working on.
I see it. I'm like, man, you have a layout for sure. Very meticulous.
So that's that, and I've got my kids I hang out with and stuff. But it's hopefully it'll in a 6 months time it'll be slightly different, and this film will be successful enough that this is what I'm doing full time, and I can not worry about delivering edits
or delivering babies either.
I'm not doing that again. Jeez Louise, that's a once in a lifetime thing. Yeah.
That's awesome. Well, it's seriously awesome film. I really enjoyed it. It had me from beginning to end on just a journey. I was watching it late at night last night, and I'm like, this is very Halloweenish feel to it, but the reality of it really struck how it could technically happen to people. It's not so far-fetched, in so many ways. So continued success. I hope you put all those notes in the back to another great script and a movie. So
we'll see how it goes. Yeah.
Joe, looking forward to connecting with you, and stay safe and healthy to you and your family.
Thanks, dude. Thanks, Jim. Take it easy.
Take care. Bye-bye.